What's up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of our NBA DFS DraftKings Picks videos, this time for Wednesday, February 16th. I am your host, Justin Bales, joined by Spike once again. How are you doing, Spike?
I'm doing pretty dang good. How about yourself?
Nothing to complain about over here. Currently teetering on the brink of cashing, so always super fun when that kind of happens. But we have a massive 11-game slate. We're gearing up right before the All-Star break. And I believe you just literally just told me 5-game slate tomorrow, so significantly smaller, but 11 games tonight, which is pretty ridiculous. A lot of different ways to go. Before we get started, if you enjoy this video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. You can subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications if you don't want to miss any of our videos. Also, drop anything that you have in the comments below, and we will try to be in throughout the day to answer them. You can find all of the information for what we do at dfskarma.com. That includes free articles, premium articles. Those can be had under the Core Plays package, which also gets you our premium projections into our premium Discord and our actual Core Plays. Keep in mind, chatdfs.com gets you into our free Discord as well, which still provides plenty of value, just not quite as much as our premium option. All the links that you could possibly need, check below in the description. They are all there, super easy to get to. But we will start this pod off with the injury news. Keep in mind, 11 games. There's quite a bit to get through. I will try to get through all of this as painlessly and quick as possible. John Collins out once again for Atlanta. RJ Hampton and Mo Wagner both out for Orlando. Daniel Gafford and Kristaps Porzingis both already ruled out for Washington. Rui Hachimura is questionable. On the other side, Chris Duarte and Miles Turner, not Miles Sanders, that's NFL, have both already been ruled out for the Indiana Pacers. And then we have Malcolm Brogdon and Isaiah Jackson, who both did not play last night. They are questionable for tonight. Frank Jackson and Isaiah Livers both out for Detroit. Marcus Smart got hurt in the game last night. He's doubtful to play. Robert Williams didn't play last night. He's currently questionable. Kyrie Irving obviously will not play in New York, but Ben Simmons also has already been ruled out for the next couple of games for the Brooklyn Nets. On the other side, you have Nerlens Noel and RJ Barrett, who have both already been ruled out for the New York Knicks. Fred VanVleet is questionable for the Toronto Raptors. And then you have on the other side, the big one is that Anthony Edwards, I believe, was injured last night. So I'm assuming he's not going to play in this game, but it is questionable. The big thing is that he injured his ankle last night and obviously couldn't return to the game. So it feels unlikely that all of a sudden he's going to be able to play tonight. Trey Jones, doubtful for the San Antonio Spurs, and then just quite a bit for Oklahoma City. Ty Jerome, Kenrick Williams, Lou Dort, Mike Muscala, and then obviously Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, all ruled out for Oklahoma City. Jeremy Lamb, questionable for Sacramento. Zach LaVine, already ruled out for Chicago. Javonte Green is questionable for them as well. Eric Bledsoe, Keon Johnson, Dennis Smith Jr., all out for Portland. And then Ja Morant was ruled out last night. I don't actually know how close he was to playing. They ruled him out a couple hours before the game, I believe, or at least like an hour before that game started. So not sure here, but he is questionable to play tonight. Landry Shamet and Cameron Payne both ruled out for the Phoenix Suns. Rudy Gay has already been ruled out for the Utah Jazz. And then you have Avery Bradley and Carmelo Anthony both out for the Lakers. And then oddly enough, LeBron James questionable. Usually he's listed on the injury report as probable. He is actually questionable for this game. So that is major news that we need to monitor. For the Denver Nuggets, Monte Morris has been upgraded to questionable. Zeke Nanji also questionable. And then you have Andre Iguodala, who is out for the Golden State Warriors. That's what we got on that. We can shift over to our position by position, obviously starting at point guard, which we do every podcast. Spike, who are you looking at point guard tonight?
Yeah, I have no issues starting at the top with DeJounte Murray. Trey Jones being doubtful, I think, just kind of solidifies a little extra playing time for him because they're pretty thin at people that can actually handle the ball now that Derek White's gone. I think the other alleged point guards they have is Lonnie Walker, newly acquired Tomas Satoransky, and Josh Primo. So that's it. So I really think DeJounte Murray probably gets a couple extra minutes here. Gets a pretty good matchup against the Oklahoma City Thunder that are missing a lot of pieces right now, but somehow are staying in games as of recently. So I think DeJounte is great, even at 11K. I mean, this guy triple doubles almost every night. So I got no issues going to him. You go down some more. Trae Young at 9,400. He had a pretty good game the night before. I expect that to be similar tonight against the Orlando Magic, who again just not a good team at all, especially on defense. There's going to be no John Collins again, so I think Trae picks up a little extra usage there, and everything kind of just goes through him. You know, he gets a ton of assists, ton of baskets. He can throw in a steal here and there. So I like him. You go down some more. I have no real issues with Josh Giddey at 8,300. Price is kind of hiking a little. He kind of had a ceiling game. I wouldn't expect for that again, but I still think there's enough upside there for him to pay off that tag. Just considering how decimated they are right now. You keep going down. I think Kevin Porter Jr. at 6,400 gets a matchup against the Suns is a relatively good play. Phoenix isn't the best at guarding the 3-shot, and Kevin Porter does a lot of that. He also gets a lot of assists, can get you some rebounds, even some steals too. And 6,400, I think, is just too cheap for him. You go down some more. Trey Mann for 4,900 against the Spurs. I got no issues with that. His minutes have kind of been all over the place, but more times than not, he's playing 25 plus minutes, and they got some more key injuries tonight that I think are going to force him to play a little bit more. Other than that, you know, if Morant's ruled out again, Tyus Jones is sitting there at 3,100. Didn't see any kind of price bump or anything like that, which I'm not too surprised about. But that's a great value play right there. And then with RJ Barrett out, I have no issues with going to 4,600 Kemba Walker.
Yeah, Kemba's interesting, I think, just because like the pure upside more or less is there for the price tag. But also, you know, it's Kemba Walker, who's not exactly the most consistent option, even with RJ Barrett out. So I do think that he's viable in this type of a situation. There are a few great options. I think one, you're probably just starting DeJounte Murray. He's coming off of what we would refer to as a bad game. He scored basically 50 fantasy points. It wasn't bad at all. It's not like he's this over 12,000 or anything. You know, he's at 11,000, comes with 80 fantasy point upside. He literally just scored 80 against the Hawks. He's averaging over 50 against Oklahoma City on the season. I think that's probably where you start. I agree Trae Young's a really good option. I am going to go back and forth on him and Chris Paul literally a million times throughout the day today. I guarantee it. I don't know which one I prefer at the moment, but I do think that both are really good plays. You can kind of continue down. I think it's so tough to get behind someone like Giddey because you hate coach speak where they say that he's not going to play more than 30 minutes and then, you know, triple doubles in 2 consecutive games now, plays over 30 in both games, played massive minutes in the overtime game as well. I think he took 22 shots. But really, how many times are you going to get Josh Giddey where he's the focal point of the offense? And I understand that a ton of people are out again, but at what point do you trust Josh Giddey to get his shot attempts in? Because I feel like you don't ever. And could he, you know, throw up 20 plus shots again? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Literally everyone is out for them. The problem is it's Josh Giddey and he just isn't that aggressive all the time. So I think right under him, De'Aaron Fox is extremely interesting. Chicago struggled a bit recently against point guards. a little weird. De'Aaron Fox is doing literally nothing outside of scoring at the moment. So, he'll continue to take his 20 plus shots. And I feel like at some point in time, he has to start adding the rebounds and assists again because, obviously they have the potential to be there. They just aren't at the moment. And I believe it was like the other night, he led the team in potential assists, only had 4. Some other guys had like 6 on 6. It's at some point in time, De'Aaron Fox will get back to the normal point guard ways that, he kind of has done. And he's always been a scoring point guard. He's never been like this super facilitator or anything, but he should do more than what he's done at the moment. I think someone like Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu, both of them very good options with Zach LaVine out. They both get the plus matchup against Sacramento, who really struggles against guards. So I think that either one of those two can be used. Under them a little bit. With Marcus Smart out, Derek White does make a lot of sense here. I also think that Jalen Suggs for $100 more in a matchup against Atlanta. There's only 2 positions that he plays. It's point guard or shooting guard. When he's playing shooting guard, Atlanta's one of the worst teams in the NBA against shooting guard, so he should be able to score at will. When he shifts to point guard, Atlanta is the worst team in the NBA in allowing assists to opposing point guards, so there's upside for that as well. Only 5,900. Jalen Suggs has flashed. He just dropped 26 and 10 the other night. So plenty of upside in that type of a situation. I agree. Trey Mann makes a lot of sense. He's only 4,900. I think if you want someone like Raul Neto at 4,700, you can at least consider him. Between him and Kemba Walker, I probably prefer Kemba just with RJ Barrett out, but kind of an interesting situation that you can look at. In that type of a thing, I guess. And then obviously if Monty Morris is out, again, you have Bones Heinlein, who 4,200, you can at least consider him. I wouldn't necessarily say he's super consistent when he's playing with the starters, when he's playing more minutes with someone like Jokic and such. But I do think that he's at least viable. And then obviously the final guy that I'll say is if Malcolm Brogdon is out, you have Lance Stevenson, who's only 3,800, point guard or small forward eligible. So kind of adds a little bit of versatility because he can play so many positions in terms of your lineup making. But I do think he will be viable if Malcolm Brogdon is out again. We can shift over to shooting guard. Who are you looking at here?
At the top, Donovan Mitchell, 9K to match up against the Lakers, who just don't really know what a defense is. He's the focal point of this offense. He's going to take a lot of shots. He can get you some assists and some rebounds, but he's more or less scoring dependent. But he can score in a hurry. He can add some steals in there too. No issues with him at 9K. I still don't think he's maxed out his price yet. You go down. I kind of preferred Devin Booker for the $500 discount over Chris Paul. I mean, it's more scoring dependent. I think he's a little more risky in that way because with Chris Paul, you get almost guaranteed assists. Devin Booker really doesn't have that guarantee. So, but I like him here against the Houston team. Again, just no defense whatsoever. We love to attack this team. And 8,700 is just too cheap for him. Regardless of whether Morant is in or out, I really like Desmond Bane at 6,400. Obviously, he becomes a lot better if Josh stays out. But it's a matchup against the Portland Trailblazers. It's a pretty good matchup for him. And he's pretty much become the number 2 on this team, more or less, with Brooks out. And I think 6,400 is a little too cheap. Probably more of a tournament play. But I still like him. Underneath him, Gary Trent's price is starting to come down a little, which is kind of like a buy low point for me, if you will. 6,100 against the Timberwolves. They get Timberwolves, I think, are the first or the second fastest pace team in the NBA right now. So it's a boost up for him. He already takes a lot of shots as it is. And it's just kind of too cheap. I personally hope we don't get Fred VanVleet news till after lock, just because that would probably bring him in a little lower owned. But yeah, I really like him. Other than that, I have no issues if you want to go to a Seth Curry or a Patty Mills, 5,700, 5,100. It's a pace down spot against the Knicks. I'm just really not super interested in them. And then my last play is pretty obvious, but Quentin Grimes, 4,100. His price got shot up a little bit. Still too cheap if he's going to be taking. I think he had 14 three-point attempts the other game. I don't think that's going to happen again, but I definitely think 7 to 10 is very reasonable and likely, and it's just still too cheap for someone who's probably going to start again and see 30 minutes.
Yeah, Grimes is one of the easier plays on the entire slate. Thankfully, he's not 3,000 again. What a stupid price tag that was. But he's 4,100, scored 35 plus in 2 consecutive. He's going to be a very popular, very easy play. Shifting back up to the top, no problems with Donovan Mitchell. I actually really like him on this slate. The big problem is that you have Devin Booker against Houston for cheaper. So the only way that I see personally using someone like Donovan Mitchell is if you're using other Phoenix guys and you can't also use Booker. The big issue with that is that the other Phoenix guys that are going to take away from Booker are also very expensive, so you probably can't use Donovan Mitchell either. I don't know. I think that Mitchell's a fine pivot. I think that Booker is obviously the guy that you use up here. Both players for Indiana, especially if Malcolm Brogdon's out. I'm specifically talking, obviously, Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield. They're playing basically like 40 minutes a game. It's crazy. Both come with plenty of upside. Neither one has priced themselves out at this point. So I think that each of them can be considered. I really like what you said about Gary Trent. It has to be a buy low spot, but at the same time, we know that Gary Trent is a streaky player. And the streak is cold right now. So plenty of risk involved there. It's just he's obviously too cheap for the matchup, against Minnesota, who struggles against shooting guards. I will say the one bigger thing for Minnesota that they do struggle more against for shooting guards is that they struggle with rebounds and assists, which, bumps the fantasy points up. I don't necessarily know if I trust Gary Trent to lean on rebounds and assists. It's more, I like him in matchups where he can go score 30 real life points. And he can certainly against Minnesota. I think they were still ranking the bottom 10 of the NBA in points allowed to shooting guards per game, but they rank in the bottom, I believe, 3 in rebounds and assists, both allowed to shooting guards per game. So I don't know. I do like Gary Trent. He was someone that I was going to say regardless. I just think that he comes with quite a bit of risk. And then probably the final guy that I would talk about, and I know you said that you don't love him that much, but I do. He's only 5,700. It's way too cheap. Seth Curry took more than 18 shots one time for the 76ers. He took 21 shots in a game earlier this season. In his debut for Brooklyn, he took 18 shots. Scored almost 40 fantasy points. He was rebounding well. He added 5 assists. The offense was running through him. The big thing is they still don't have Kevin Durant. They still don't have Kyrie Irving. James Harden obviously traded. They don't have an offensive identity. It looks like it's not going to run through Patty Mills anymore. I know that Cam Thomas is the obvious option, but when you have someone like Seth Curry on the court, he just takes it away. And I think he's going to do it again. He's going to shoot as many times as he wants. And we already know that given the role, Seth Curry can easily outproduce his price tag. I don't know. I agree with you that the matchup's not elite against the Knicks. I just think that he's way too cheap for the potential role that he's taking on for Brooklyn. We can shift over to small forward here now, though. LeBron James questionable at the top. That's something that we definitely need to keep an eye on throughout the day. But overall, who are you looking at here?
I guess the first name that pops up is Kyle Kuzma. He's getting up there in price, man. It's 8,600. I still think there's some value there with no Kristaps and Dinwiddie gone. Still think he could easily drop 50 points and beat that price tag, especially against a Pacers team that really doesn't have a lot of size. Not like he's a big guy, but he's a guy that can contribute in all 5 categories. saw him triple double a couple nights ago. Saw him flirt with another one the next night, I think, and he just sees a ton of usage without all these guys either on the team or on the court. So I got no issues going there. You go down some more. I think Josh Hart at 6,900 is kind of a little too cheap for his new role in Portland. It's kind of like, I mean, it was the trade that, it was for him, Hart for McCollum, more or less. That was it. But they pretty much like flopped roles just on different teams. And Hart sees a lot of usage there. He's pretty much the number 2 guy, in my opinion, there right now. Gets a decent matchup against the Grizzlies, who, without Dylan Brooks, just not a defense I'm overly scared of. And as we saw the other night, he can kind of just take over and score, put up rebounds, assists. He can throw in some blocks and steals, just contribute all over the place. I really like him at that price. You go down some more. Harrison Barnes, 6,300. He's kind of seen his role expand a little bit after the trade with Halliburton and Buddy Hield. So I got no issues going to him against the Bulls defense that isn't the greatest against small forwards. They're not terrible, but I like him here. Underneath that, Bogdanovich at 5,500. As long as John Collins isn't playing right now, he's going to see a little bit more minutes. I'd really like him to crack that starting lineup. It just hasn't happened yet. I feel like it's going to happen sooner rather than later. But even coming off the bench, he's seeing 30 minutes a game. It's a pretty good matchup against the Magic. And with his shots falling, 5,500 is just way too cheap. I guess I'm just gonna say it because there's no Irving, and he had a breakout game, so I have no issues going back to Bruce Brown at 4K. I wouldn't expect the same kind of performance, but I think he could easily give you 25 fantasy points and break that 4K price tag for you. Other than that, I mean, I was gonna say Lance Stevenson, but you kind of stole him at point guard. I don't mind taking a punt on someone like Zaire Williams at 3,200. As long as he's starting, he should see 20 minutes. And if his 3 shots falling, he can pay off that kind of price tag. But that's probably about it for me at, once again, a terrible position.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Small forward's just kind of here. Also, we didn't mention this. D'Angelo Russell feels really nice without Anthony Edwards, assuming that Edwards doesn't play, because Edwards hasn't been ruled out at this point. But I do want to mention that if Edwards is out, D'Angelo Russell seems really, really nice.
He's pretty cheap too, considering if he's out, 7,400.
Mm-hmm. I think we can add Pat Bev to it as well. I don't think that Patrick Beverley necessarily is going to take over the offense the way that D'Angelo Russell can, but I do think that he gains a little bit of value, and I do like him in that situation. But shifting over to small forward, I think you nailed it. You probably look towards Kyle Kuzma, most likely at 8,600. Josh Hart taking on a much larger role. I wasn't 100% certain if his offensive production, obviously he scored 23 in the first game, but he shot 7 of 12. So it's not like he took a ridiculous amount of shots. I guess he did have 8 free throws. And then the next game, 10 of 16. So it's very clear that Josh Hart is getting a major offensive role, most likely, more or less behind Anthony Simons. But as long as that continues to happen, Josh Hart under 7K is too cheap. Harrison Barnes, you already outlined, but I love the matchup against the Bulls. They're not good whatsoever against forwards, and Harrison Barnes is obviously coming off of a bad game, which hopefully keeps his ownership a little bit lower. But prior to that was on fire and looked really, really good. At 6,000, Justice Winslow is just playing too many minutes. I've been a Justice Winslow guy for years. I really liked him coming in. Obviously, he didn't do all that well early in his career. I still think more or less people, label guys bust way too fast. Now he's getting 30-plus minutes. He looks really good. He's scoring decently well. He's not a guy that's going to completely overwhelm you with scoring, but he can add rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals each night. 30-plus fantasy points in each of his last 4. Obviously, he's played 30-plus minutes in 4 straight as well. So, as long as he's getting the time, which it looks like he will for Portland, I do think that he's 100% fine in the matchup against Memphis. You can shift down a little bit more. There's a bunch of guys that we talked about at shooting guard. I don't necessarily love that many guys. I think you're completely fine playing someone like Jay Crowder in the matchup. Don't love him. I'm not going to force him into my lineups or anything. I think right below him, Danny Avdija is completely fine. Kyle Kuzma joked the other night he actually played a bunch of minutes at center, which could happen again against Indiana. Obviously, they don't have the biggest team in the world. But Kuzma said that Denny had a career high in rebounds because he allowed him to, because of the way that he was playing center and that he was boxing out Isaiah Stewart the entire night. Well, that could be the case again. And if that is the case, then obviously Denny at 4,800 comes with more than enough upside to pay off the price tag. And then I think the very obvious option at 4K, you already said him, is Bruce Brown. He played 30-plus minutes his last game. He's always generally performed well when playing, high 20s, low 30s minutes. You're not getting 8 steals and blocks again. So I know Spike played him in his last game, completely destroyed that. I reaped all the rewards of a potential Bruce Brown. Don't think you're lucking out again into 8 steals and blocks, though. I do think that he's one of the better plays for the price tag, though. 4K is just way too cheap. Probably going to become one of the chalkier plays as well in this slate. But we can shift over to power forward, where you're just looking at DeMar DeRozan, who's on an entire another level at the moment. Everyone talking in the offseason about how the Bulls made the worst acquisition of the entire offseason in DeMar DeRozan, and boy, is he making everyone eat their words on that. First, are you considering DeRozan? Because obviously he's not cheap anymore, and he does a ton of scoring, but doesn't always do other stuff. So it's not like he's dropping these 80 fantasy point games. And 2, just what are you looking at overall at power forward?
Yeah, I got a good amount of interest in DeMar. I played him the other night, and he was kind of slow to start off, but when he gets going, man, he just gets going. I think I saw he made like 6 shots in a row. You're not going to get a lot of peripherals out of him. He's more scoring dependent, but that being said, like, he can score in a hurry. I think he put up like 20 points in 1 quarter alone the other night. So that's just kind of the upside you get with him. But add to it that it's a really good matchup against the Kings, who is just we've been attacking them all year. There's no reason to stop now. So I really like him up there, even at 10-4. I think he comes with enough upside to beat that tag. Underneath him, I think Paschall Siakam's price has come down to it's more or less to me a buy low with the way he's been playing. 9,300 against the Timberwolves. It's a pace up spot. If you add into the mix that there's no Fred VanVleet, he sees a usage bump, and he just always has the ball in his hand, regardless of whether Fred VanVleet's on or not. He can score down low. He can shoot the 3. Gets you plenty of rebounds. Adds a lot of assists too. He's flirted with triple doubles a lot in the past week or two. I'm just a really big fan of him at that price. On the other side of that Bulls game, I have no issues going back to Domantas Sabonis at 8,900. They're not that great at guarding power forwards either. And sooner or later, Sabonis is just going to have a breakout game here. Hasn't happened yet. I feel like it's going to happen. It's a pretty good matchup for him, and I really like him here. After that, my pool just kind of drops off a little bit. I think Jonathan Kuminga at 4,500 is fine, as long as he's starting. I should say. The next one comes with plenty of risk, and Jalen Smith at 3,900. If you think he can keep his hands to himself long enough to get some fantasy points, I would definitely give him a whirl in tournaments. It's just too cheap for someone who could potentially double if he doesn't hit that foul trouble. And double at 3,900 is something I want to have. But that's more or less about it. I guess you could interest me in a Wendell Carter Jr. at 7,300 against the Hawks. I got no issues with a Jaren Jackson at 7,100 against the Blazers. I guess if you really want to punt, Eric Paschall at 3,200. Rudy Gay has already been ruled out, so he's got to see some kind of minutes. It's still up in the air how many minutes he sees, so it's definitely a high risk, high reward play. But again, it's just a punt. But that's probably about it for me at power forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting position. I feel like you're probably trying to spend up here. DeMar DeRozan's fine. Julius Randle has just been absolutely destroying without RJ Barrett. I think that he's 100% fine because Brooklyn doesn't have anyone that's going to guard him. Jason Tatum, not necessarily my favorite play, but he's down to 9,600. Very good option against Detroit, who doesn't have anyone that's going to slow him down. Paschall Siakam, we already know. We talked about just a really good play, especially if Fred VanVleet's out. And then right below him, you have Domantas Sabonis, obviously also gets a really good matchup, and we like. Then you even have Kyle Kuzma, who we talked about, a small forward. All of them are in play. I literally think that you can play any one of them. I think if I had to rank them for their prices right now, it would probably be Siakam, Randle, DeRozan, Tatum, Sabonis. Tough, though. I don't think you can go wrong really with any of them. As you drop down, 6,500 for Darius Bazley. He's dropped 40 plus in 3 straight. Locked into big minutes at this point. He's playing some center. Obviously, we know that San Antonio really struggles against the center. Jakob Poeltl isn't going to be able to guard him at the 3-point line either, so he should get some open shots there. But I do think 6,500 is a little too cheap. I'm just also not 100% sure that I'm willing to say that Darius Bazley is a safe option at this point, even though he's been easily beating the price tag for multiple games in a row. 5,700 on the other side, Kelden Johnson. I know he's now struggled in 2 straight games, but I do like the matchup. I think that he comes with plenty of upside. And, Kelden Johnson's a guy that I'm always willing to consider under 6,000 because, he's pretty consistent throughout. He has a very obvious role for San Antonio. He's locked into the minutes. So I do think that that's fine. As you drop down a bit more, I think you nailed it more or less with the cheaper options. A few guys that you can go with. I think the one obvious one is going to be Jalen Smith at 3,900. Very good per minute player. Even if, he gets in foul trouble, he probably still gets 15 to 20 minutes on his new team. He's throwing up threes at this point. The dude looks good. I think that he's a good player. Obviously, he's very good per minute. So 3,900, I'm completely fine playing him. The other guy that I think you can consider here is Marvin Bagley. He played 21 minutes in his Pistons debut. The big thing for me was in that game, Isaiah Stewart was so much better than Bagley. It was crazy. Yet they closed out the majority of the fourth quarter with Bagley. Really dumb in terms of a real life, like a real basketball perspective. Pretty insane. It played a big reason as to why they got blown out late in that game. I'm pretty sure they were, right in it until they just didn't bring Isaiah Stewart back in, and then all of a sudden they were down 10. But in terms of fantasy, if they're just going to give Bagley minutes, 3,600's way too cheap for that. So I do think that he's at least viable here. We can shift over to center, which is always a completely loaded position. Obviously, we have Joker on this slate. The big thing is that he gets a tougher matchup against Golden State. He's also playing on the road where he's about 4 fantasy points worse, 4.5 fantasy points worse, I guess I'll say, per game. So big decision for a 12-4 price tag as to whether you're actually going to use Joker tonight or not. But go ahead and break down this position for me.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I haven't used them like the last 2 or 3 slates. I can't believe I'm saying that, but and it's kind of worked out in my favor. But I don't know how many times Lightning's not going to strike. He's it's a more difficult matchup, but in my opinion, he's pretty much matchup proof. I have no issues going to him. I'm not sure if I get there today. I think you can spend down a little bit more and get a more even keeled team. Because besides him, there's and DeJounte, there's no one else over 11K. So if you take one of them, you're just going to have to go hit some value somewhere else, which is fine because we already have it. We'll get more as the day continues on. So bottom line, no issues there. I think Nikolai Vucevic is also a really good play. 9,900, so it's getting up there. It is, but I mean, you don't really get a much better matchup than this. Kings are really bad against the center position. They have nobody who's going to stop him, and there's no Zach LaVine. So I could see this guy having a really nice day. Could easily double on any slate, especially when playing the Kings. I'm thinking maybe the 9,900 price tag will keep his ownership semi-low, and just because this position is really loaded, but time will tell on that one. If you go down more, like you can use Siakam or Sabonis here. No issues doing that at all. I think my next play is probably Deandre Eaton at 6,800 against the Houston Rockets. The Rockets struggle against the center position. It's a little too cheap for Deandre Eaton here. The problem is I don't think his minutes have been really consistent lately. He's been splitting more time with McGee. He kind of flirts around that 25-minute marker. And I'd really like to see him get to like 30 minutes for him to really smash value there. But either way, I really like him there. I have no issues if he starts going back to Andre Drummond again at 5,800. I don't think he really played that good of a game. His last game, he still put up over 32 fantasy points. And I was going to say when you were talking about Bruce Brown, but I feel like with the Nets, if you're not playing well, you're not getting time. So I think if he's playing really, really well, he'll get more time. I feel like that's why Bruce Brown got as much time as he did. But it just goes to my point that you got to be playing well on that team to get more minutes each game. It's kind of what I've seen. It's a little bit of a pattern. That's why it's so hard to predict who he plays. Just my opinion. Underneath there, I have no issues going back to a Clint Capella at 5,300. Still too cheap with no John Collins. Gets a decent matchup against the Orlando Magic. I think you can. I think you can take a shot on someone like Steven Adams if you want. 5,400 gets a decent matchup against the Trail Blazers. I have no issues with going to Isaiah Stewart. It'd be better if Robert Williams wasn't playing. But 5,100 is too cheap for him as long as he sees those minutes. If he doesn't, and they somewhat for some reason go to Bagley again, well, then you're gonna be a little upset. But that's probably about it for me. I guess Mitchell Robinson at 5,900 is okay. But that's about it.
Yeah, for me, Joker's fine. You can use him, but there's other positions that I want to not necessarily spend up in terms of playing someone over $11,000 or anything, but there's other positions that I do want to spend up. I want to spend up at power forward. I'll probably play someone like Kyle Kuzma at small forward. So, other positions that I can spend the money at. So I probably don't get to Joker for what it's worth. I think he's 100% fine. If you ask me literally any night, I'll tell you that you can play Nikola Jokic. It's just he's that kind of a player. Completely agree with Vucevic. I think if Fred VanVleet's ruled out, there's no way Vucevic gets any ownership really because people are just going to drop to Paschall Siakam, as they probably should. If Fred VanVleet is out, I prefer Siakam to Vucevic. but I think that both are very good options. Jakob Poeltl and DeAndre Ayton, both there. Ayton is really, really doing bad right now. If you're looking at the game, this is recorded the night before. He's playing Los Angeles, which should be an elite matchup for him. He's not doing well whatsoever, but could keep his ownership down a little bit more against a team like Phoenix. The big thing to kind of keep in consideration for this Phoenix Houston game, the blowout. I wouldn't overexpose myself necessarily at the moment to too many Phoenix options because I would assume that the spread probably is like 13 points, wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
So tough to kind of pay up for a lot of the Phoenix guys. And, obviously someone's going off because someone has to create the blowout. But there's a lot of risk involved just in terms of, guys not really getting the massive minutes. I think slightly below 6,000, Mitchell Robinson is 100% fine. I'm not worried about Andre Drummond's defense whatsoever. I'm not worried about anyone else that they can throw on the floor either. And then right below him, Andre Drummond. I completely agree. Really good option. I think both of them are probably more geared towards tournaments because Clint Capella really struggled in his game last night. Didn't look good whatsoever, but he played 31 minutes. If he's getting that time, 53 is way too low of a price tag. So I do think that he will make a very, very good option once again on this slate. Besides that, I think that's probably about as low as I go. I think if you want to take the shot on someone like Mo Bamba and just hope that they don't play him 11 minutes again, that was really, really weird, but they could use his size against Clint Capella. So I think that Bamba's fine at 4,400 for the pure upside of it. Just not a guy that I'm really, trying to get into my lineups too much. But that is all we have for you guys for tonight. Again, massive 11-game slate. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Drop any comments that you have below. You can also find all of our stuff at dfskarma.com. We will be back. I believe Ben will be handling the 5-gamer for Thursday. Then we'll be back, obviously, after the All-Star break. So good luck tonight. Good luck for Thursday as well if we don't see you. But hopefully everyone hits big.